Kia ora, Hamish.
Hi, how are you?
It's loopback time. Our tiny team of 2 loop backers has exploded into Tahiru Atoru Wha Rima? 5. We have 5 in the room. Abby the Chihuahua is also in the room. And the reason for this tiny cluttered space, I think it's a nice metaphor for the cluttered and busy space of an ADHD brain. How did you like that? October is ADHD Awareness Month. We work in a digital design and software engineering organisation, which is another way of saying swing a cat and hit someone who's neurospicy. And so we thought it would be a really interesting thing to loop back and loop in to the way in which different ways of thinking show up in our work with a couple of people who experience it on the daily basis.
What does it mean to have a human in the loop?
Human in the loop.
Human in the loop. What in the world is a human in the loop?
Being a human in the loop.
AI in the loop. Humans in charge.
Welcome to Human in the Loop. Do you want to introduce everyone in the room?
These are 3 humans whose names I should know. So we have Tej, Sam and Patricia joining us.
Hello.
And I'm sure that they can all go around and explain why we've picked these 3 lovely people in particular to join us. So let's go around the room maybe from my left clockwise, and we'll get you to explain a little bit more what you do at Rush and why you're in the room.
Yeah, so I'm Tej. I'm a senior front-end engineer at Rush Digital. And yeah, I'm still trying to figure out why I'm in this room. I think I have a hunch, but I've been told I'm going to be the control, the neurotypical brain, possibly undiagnosed. I think for me, it's just interesting getting to understand people's minds and just see how they think and how different it is to how I think.
Some of the first conversations we had about doing a podcast at Rush, it's like this is an evolution of a million evening balcony conversations, and it was often the group of us that are here plus or minus a few others, and it's when you sit down after work in a group of people and you cover off so many different topics that the conversation starts to vibrate in really exciting ways that send all your creative and deep dives, hyper focus neurons firing. And I think as we've done ADHD workshops and awareness over the years at Rush to better design a workplace for people of different needs, you've always been someone, Tej, who is the most curious and interested about how people's brains work, and it's really interesting to have some of those observations reflected back. So I think that's the lens I would bring, and just to,
thank you,
validate your your necessity in every conversation.
Greetings. I'm Patricia. I'm a senior digital product designer here at Rush, and I was diagnosed ADHD as an adult at the ripe old age of, I think, 25. Currently 29, I think. Yeah. So it's been about 4 years of being aware of this concept of like neurodivergence and how it kind of informs the patterns and ways of being that have like shaped my life, both like in my upbringing and at school and at work, and contextualizes some of the ways I found myself not quite necessarily fitting the molds that I or other people have wanted me to fit in throughout my life. And yeah, it's like this ongoing journey of discovering more about neurodivergence. So I'm diagnosed ADHD, but through like everyone else, internet, TikTok, YouTube, have come to a sort of self-understanding that I may also be AUDHD, which is like spicy blend of autism and ADHD. As someone who identifies as a woman, like the way I present is very different from like my stereotypes, I guess, of what ADHD or an autistic person looks like growing up, because, you know, I was never like the troublemaker, like rowdy, boisterous boy throwing things around a classroom. In fact, I was the complete opposite, straight A student, like quiet, but relatively daydreamy in class, which I guess was the sign. So yeah, it's really interesting coming into this as an adult to see how like people who also identify as neurodivergent may have had very different experiences from mine. So I guess, yeah, I'll pass over to Sam.
Cool. I'm Sam. I'm also a senior digital product designer at Rush, with a very wordy title. I was diagnosed officially very recently, like the start of this year, but long suspected. And I guess looking back, I have a very typical, like my symptoms are very typical of a young boy, I guess, like very hyperactive, very distracting. Had a lot of people tell me some really horrible things as a kid, like you're lazy, you're good for nothing, you're never going to amount to anything, all that kind of stuff. And then on top of that, being a child of an immigrant from an Asian family, and I guess in those types of families, academics is a very prominent factor. Like your success academically is very, very high, and so I did not meet those, and so going through life, all the adults telling me you're not so great, you're not going to amount to anything, that becomes your kind of reality if everyone's telling you that kind of stuff. So I think dealing with that as I've gone older, and then finally when I was diagnosed, like this morning of a life that could have been, if someone back then had realized, oh, you're not lazy, you just think differently to everyone else, especially in the 90s, like growing up in the early mid-late 90s, like the education system in New Zealand back then, not fit for someone who was neurodiverse, let's say. Yeah.
On that note, though, do you feel like schools, maybe Elena, you can answer this, do you feel like schools have changed or accustomed to, or what am I trying to accommodate? Are they more accommodating for kids on the spectrum at the moment?
Yes and no. Awareness and acceptance of what types of behaviours may fall into spectrum disorders is much more widely accepted. At the same time, you're battling a generation who, right now, the kids in primary school are the kids who grew up through COVID. So they've been way more device aware. There's a lot of kids who are unable to learn and unable to focus, and sometimes I have teachers who are saying it's hard to know whether it's coming from ADHD or learned behaviours or a blend of the two. In my own children's primary schools, the classrooms are set up better with quiet spaces, sensory toys. Teachers notice behaviours, they try to make allowances. However, I know of instances where there are children who are very high in need and they are, quote unquote, not qualifying for funding and support. I don't know that that's the right language. They qualify for support. There is not the money to give them support. And so the system's close to breaking point. In my own household recently in New Zealand, I think this is a global problem actually, Ritalin is in short supply. We've had times in our household where you're shortfalled on pills and, to use the crass term, you have to raw dog life. For kids sitting exams in particular, like I know with talking to the pharmacists around our house, huge problem. When you've got kids in the middle of high school who are about to sit exams and they can't get the medication that they have been used to help them adjust to focus. Yeah, so it is good that people are more aware. I absolutely believe that people seeking diagnosis is a great thing. The system has exploded in a way that New Zealand isn't keeping up with.
Yes, I do have experience with that. So in the last couple of months, the medication that I had been regularly taking, Ritalin/Concerta, was basically impossible to get a hold of. Like I would go to the pharmacy and be constantly told, nope, we don't have any nationwide shortage for the next couple of months. So my way of kind of getting around that was going to my psychiatrist and asking to be re-prescribed a different branded medication. So now I'm on Vyvanse, which is a lot more readily available. We'll see how long that lasts before more people start cottoning onto the same idea. But I guess one of many, many segues we could possibly go on, like understanding for me how medication affects my brain in both beneficial and not so beneficial ways. I guess not so. Largely, medication has been like a benefit in my life in terms of just getting my executive function to where a neurotypical person's is, you know, the dopamine shortage and all of that, like not having to like battle my own brain uphill just to be able to like do the things that I tell myself I need to do. But I guess the flip side is just experiencing those kind of like crashes throughout the day or like during a medication shortage when you just don't have access to your meds, and just feeling how much harder things are in like a way that's hard to describe. It's like there are like 5 more obstacles in your own way than someone who may not have a dopamine shortage. So yeah, just it gives me an appreciation for how fortunate and privileged we are that we have access to like medication as a support that, you know, we can afford, especially in a system where neurodivergent mental health care is very privatized. Like we have to go through clinics and pay thousands of dollars just to even like, you know, get the sort of support for ourselves. But then, yeah, like also not knowing that it's not a magic bullet by any means. And the medication just enables your brain to have the tools it needs to do that, but it's not going to fix your problems for you magically. So where was I? In classic, I think that was just a demonstration of, that was just a demonstration of how our like stream of consciousness works, I guess. Like I know, like Sam, I'll like hand over to you next. But I've been medicated my entire time at Rush. For you've just
Very
started
recently. Yeah.
So yeah, how's that?
It's a really
been?
daunting process, though, right? Like, it's a lot of money. It takes a lot of time. Like my wait was like 8 months or something. It was so long. And then it was like another $1,000+ on top of that. And then on top of that, I'm paying like another $300 something every year or every twice a year. So it's a lot of money. It's like a really big, daunting process to like to get started, and not for no guarantee of anything either, right? Like just talking about how medication affects you. Like what I find crazy is that every single person that I've talked to who's medicated has like some different, oh, I can't take this, oh, I can't take this, this does this. I had a friend who took Vyvanse, and you're on Vyvanse and you don't seem to have any problems, but
yeah, it's actually been the one that works best for me.
But I have a friend who took Vyvanse and her hair started falling out.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
It was a different point I was going to make, actually. You're talking about like how you get off topic and how you feel like that's a result of like ADHD. I don't think it necessarily is. I mean, it might just be that there's just loads of older people who aren't diagnosed. But if you listen to any of these podcasts, especially before Elena has edited them, but even afterwards, we just go off for miles and miles on completely tangential rants, right? I don't think that's ADHD. I think that's just people.
But it is definitely a hallmark, though, of, for example, like the balcony chats that you mentioned earlier. I think what was so like liberating about those balcony chats for me was like it was a chance to like unmask at the end of a work day.
Yeah, there's no expectation.
And like, constantly when I'm sitting in meetings, right? Like I am like ring fencing my like train of thought to, for lack of a better explanation, be as neurotypical as possible. Like don't go off on your 500 different segues that you like currently have pinging off at every given moment. Try and go with like the frame of the discussion that's happening at the moment. But with these balcony chats, we're just like listening to each other, and then our brains will make a random connection to something someone said maybe like 2 sentences ago, and we'll ping off on it, and it's like a judgment-free space in which to do that. And suddenly it's like we're able, like when we drop that kind of like mask that we like condition ourselves to operate within in like a professional workplace environment, and just let ourselves like yarn off with other potentially neurodivergent peers. It's like this explosion of, I don't know, like cognitive productivity. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's like the plugs you've put into your brain just come out, and then all of your ideas just start to flow way more kind of authentically and naturally. And like I feel like that's where my actual true personality comes out.
And you don't have to do
really
the work to do to make those connections. It's like everyone sort of gets it.
Yeah, like that whole thing of like when you're masking, you're using up energy, right? Like it actually expends energy to try and direct your personality and your behavior in a certain way that isn't quite natural to you.
Yeah.
But when you're able to drop that, it's like maybe that's where our true potential lies, which is like probably the whole kind of theme of this discussion. How do we unlock our like full potential?
So that's really fascinating. From the example of like all day long, you have to mask and sort of behave neurotypically, but then when you unwind and allow the conversation to flow naturally for you, that's more energizing for you. I've had the exact opposite experience where, as a listener, it's great because it's just pure entertainment, right? You just have to listen. But if you have to get engaged and try and keep up, it's very difficult. It's chaotic. It's just, I'm just forever fascinated by how your brain makes those connections. It's like the topics that we jump between, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but like, I remember listening and being like, this totally makes sense, but I wouldn't have gone there myself. Right? Like the jump between the segue from one topic to another. And if I had to do that myself and communicate to someone else like that, it would be exhausting for me to think of how to creatively go from one step to another. But for you guys, it just comes sort of naturally. And on the flip side, when you're trying to behave neurotypically, which I'm assuming is keeping strong focus on one thing, very linear, very logical, structured way of thinking. I've been told I speak quite robotically sometimes. People are like, you're too logical, you're too like step-by-step instructions, algorithmic almost. But I guess that's just the problem-solving brain that I'm blessed or cursed with, I guess. In that sense, going from that structured, rigid approach to hearing free-flowing, creative stuff, that's energizing for you guys. Is that what I'm... And do you find that's what sort of drew you towards a creative outlet or creative outlets, multiple, plural?
Well, I guess that's very topical for me because when I graduated from university, I literally had a fork in the pathway. I could literally go into development or design.
Oh, yeah.
And I think
something
subconscious in me went design because of like I think I was just terrified of this notion of prescriptive solutions that have like there is a correct way to be or a correct answer. Whereas, like, okay, back to the whole Asian upbringing thing, I still needed to be in a STEM career, obviously, but like at least like, product design, human-centered design, I work in tech, so box ticked, but also just being able to somehow channel that kind of like, I'll call it centipede-shaped knowledge. It's not T-shaped because there's lots of legs. Centipede-shaped knowledge that I think ADHDers and naturally kind of have like intrinsically, because I guess we just have so many different like directions that pique our interest, hence the like constant segueing, and that reflects in our like knowledge. So with executive function being like a challenge to people who are diagnosed ADHD due to like, well, one, a lack of dopamine leading to kind of dysfunction in the executive reward centers of your brain, which means like if a task isn't novel or exciting, you're very unlikely to be able to make yourself do it without a lot of like beating yourself up. And for me, that beating myself up in my childhood looked like procrastinating to create urgency so that I could do the thing that I needed to do. And basically that surfaced as like all of my like school reports, essays, things that I had to write for school, for uni, they'd be basically done in like the 5 hours before they were due. And the crazy thing is I did get like almost consistently like straight A's, like even with that approach. And like looking back now, it's like at what cost? The cost to me was like multiple like caffeine fueled all-nighters, like being literally twitchy from the stress of it. But like I never seemed to be able to like be like other students and just have like the, I'll write a little bit of it every day for like 2 weeks until I'm like, and I can submit early. What is an early submission? That was never a thing for me. But like my work style, I guess, was very much informed by how I knew my brain like operates best, which is hyper focus under urgency and like artificially induced pressure. Not that I necessarily enjoyed it or thrived under it, but I needed it. So it's an interesting insight into like now that I'm an adult with a hopefully fully formed prefrontal cortex, I have decisions like how do I want to, like, knowing that I know that about myself, like what do I want to do consciously now to address that, because I don't want to spend the rest of my life being that like, perpetually stressed all-nighter pulling teenager trying to get my like life shit sorted.
It's so interesting. Like some people don't even have that trait, right? Like I wouldn't consider myself to have that trait of like needing, I mean, I do put stuff off to to the last minute, but not to maybe the level that you've described it. But I don't know, it's just like interesting. There's like this range of, it's like such a spectrum of like symptoms. It's like so hard to put one label on it sometimes.
I'm giving Sam a look across the room because within ADHD, right, there's the type that is quite dreamy and inattentive. That's it. And then there's hyperactive. And here is a classic example
You
story.
better call me out.
You know exactly the story. So do you
Don't.
remember it was like a rush party? We were hanging out at your house beforehand. Sam has this boxing bag set that was in the corner of his patio for how long?
Maybe like a year and a half.
Yeah, in a fully in a box. We're about to leave for a party. We're
Forgot about
fully
this.
dressed, ready to go. What do?
She puts the whole boxing bag together.
It was like a full-on frame.
in like 30
I'm
minutes.
like, give me the Allen keys. I'm doing this.
Like 30 minutes. While everyone is like drinking and having
Hanging out,
fun.
just ready for a Christmas party. I'm like,
Elena's on
I
the
found a
balcony.
task that I want to get accomplished immediately.
Procrastinating work by it's the procrastinating work by doing other work that has like, oh my god, like I have a report to do, but instead I'm gonna do 2 weeks worth of laundry right now because suddenly that's very topical.
Or in that example, actually, it's here's a whole lot of people hanging out, and I know most of them, but sometimes social situations make me awkward, so I'm going to find a really practical thing to do. And people say there's a whole generation that never, quote unquote, had ADHD, but there's also a whole generation of mums who spent their entire social lives in a kitchen. Doing stuff for people, cooking the things and serving the things and avoiding engaging. So yeah, peel the layers.
Yeah. And I feel like that touches on another kind of really key, like, common experience with people who discover their own neurodivergence. Like, it's this journey from, like, is there something wrong with me to I am neurodivergent? And then the question of, like,
What could I have been?
Yeah, what could I have been? But also, like, it's not, you're not broken. I think like that's the catharsis of a diagnosis of like understanding neurodivergence. It's that like all the things that you struggled with in your life were never an inherent character flaw in you. It's because we exist in a society that was built by and large by and for neurotypical people, and it is a stressor, and it does cause like forms of micro and macro trauma to like be just like, you know, a square peg in a round hole all the time in work and in life and in social. Like
those depressive symptoms come from the like how people have treated you or how you've grown up with ADHD symptoms, right? So like I think I know a lot of friends who are probably neurodivergent, I don't want to label them, but then also have been prescribed and have taken antidepressants and have had really negative effects from them. It makes you think like, like some of these doctors are like,
the depression was a symptom of
Yeah,
undiagnosed
but it's
or
not
unacknowledged
because they're-
neurodivergence.
yeah.
And the inability to cope with a lack of support.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that, you know, there's a really dangerous aspect there from a
Yeah.
medication standpoint.
Like, I worry that some of this is a response to myth anyway, right? You've been told a lie. We've all been told a lie that there is that this normal sort of person who's this super productive person is the normal. And then they've made you sad by presenting this myth of this incredible life that everyone else is living and you're not, right? And the correct response is not to say, oh, well, I'm a poor or I'm a whatever. And now, you know, I understand the reason that I'm not achieving this life. And it's more to say, like, thinking about your story, like people who did stuff late in high school, right? I didn't have a lot of friends, but 20 people I knew, one person would do their assignments more than the day before it was due.
Have
It's
you
just
ever
like,
heard that, like, if you look around and all your closest friends are neurospicy, I've got some news for you.
Yeah. But this was a random, like,
Yeah.
it was just school. It wasn't like people
Yeah.
that, like, just like, because I just drifted between social groups. Very few people were organized in the way that is presented as like this, you know, high performance normal.
So
person.
take it back.
I think that's more uncommon than you think.
Prior to social media, you said there's a myth, and part of the myth is baked in to job descriptions and contracts and HR, because showing up 9 to 5 and being productive for X amount of billable hours is sometimes really fucking hard.
Yeah.
And I mean, I find myself thinking a lot, like, how do I timesheet my staring at the ceiling time?
Yeah.
You know, like, a lot, like, seriously, like, when I do design, a lot of it is literally me going,
Sitting
like,
and staring
zoning
at the
out at
screen,
the
yeah.
wall, because I'm, like, the cogs are turning in my head, and that, so, you know, like, but from the outside, it doesn't look like I'm materially doing anything, not at least in the way that, like, you know, a capitalist would ascribe to, like, material productivity. So, yeah, that's interesting.
I might have a loaded question to tie this all
Go on,
together
load
and
it
wrap
up.
this up. Load it up. So, Sam, you mentioned the upbringing where you said people would call you lazy or not able to focus or not hardworking enough.
Yeah.
Patricia, you mentioned the multiple types of meds that have helped you gain a bit more executive function, but you're still left with improving your habits and improving your behaviors, and it enables you to do all that. Now, tying this all together, say you're someone who's grown up like this as an adult, you've been diagnosed as an adult, and now you have your options of, you know, you can take some meds to help your executive function, but you have this hard challenge of undoing the negative narrative in your head and improving behaviors to fit into a more neurotypical place. So I guess the question is twofold. What do you find is really important in a workplace or in an environment where is it more about the acceptance and the welcomingness of people, or is it more about things like, you know, how do I timesheet this? Do you want infrastructure or tools that could better adapt to your situation?
Both.
You can't really have one without the other. It's kind of like chicken and egg. Like, a workplace wouldn't implement supports if it didn't have an attitude of acceptance. And, like, more than acceptance, it's like a belief that these people can do well. Like, I think there's this, like, notion of, like, oh, we have someone who needs special supports in the company, like, we're doing them a favor. But, like, I think a truly progressive workplace or environment is one that recognizes that it's not something it's not a favor you're doing us. It's not something you're going out of your way. It's like, it's in everyone's best interests to create an environment where everyone feels like they can show up and do their best in their own way. And that's the key.
And also, like Hamish said, there's probably a lot more of us than people realize.
Yeah. Like, every, like, statistic study I've seen, like, reflects that
Especially in this
neurodivergence.
industry.
Yeah, neurodivergence is very, like, it's overrepresented within the tech industry.
And design, yeah.
And I think that's just because it draws in a lot of us who, like, couldn't pin ourselves into, like, a single specific discipline and wanted to go broad.
Or problem solve in a very specific way.
yeah.
Not specific way, in lots of specific ways.
Yeah. So, and now we're at this, like, crossroads of, like, great, we've found ourselves an industry that, like, tickles our brains and gives us curly problems to solve. And now there's this challenge of, will our workplaces let us solve those problems in the curly ways that we know how?
And we're still working on that.
Yeah.
That's a really good answer.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it.
I was going to add one more question, if that's all right.
Not
So-
really. We need to wrap up.
10
How
seconds?
quick can you ask it?
If we're already doing it, great. But if not, what more could we be doing?
Ooh. I mean, we've got like all of our belonging steering groups and all this kind of stuff set up. We're doing all these sensor surveys. We're like equipping ourselves with knowledge of like how many people are neurodivergent, how many suspect that they are, you know, stuff like that. I think the first step is to like educate yourself. And I feel like we're doing that pretty well.
And I think, to make a quick answer of this, it's that piece around, for those of us who are, like, neurotypical, like, how can we, like, best collaborate with and support our peers who are neurodivergent? Because there was a study that was called, like, the Chinese whisper study. Basically, neurotypical people communicate and relate to other neurotypicals best, and vice versa. Neurodivergents communicate and relate to best with other neurodivergents, and things tend to get lost in translation when you cross them over. So I think that's where, like, I guess companies can focus on improving, like, collaboration processes and just, like, ways of working that support both.
Well, then how about this? Just always try to assume the best in people and make an effort to understand them.
That's beautiful.
And that's all we've got time for, because
Except me, I don't want you interacting with me. Leave me alone.
We'll try. We'll try really hard.
Empathy for everyone except Hamish.
Yeah. Leave me alone!
Because you won't get it back.
He washes his hands of everybody. Scrubbing off the interactions of a day. Thank you. Wonderful Sam, Patricia and Tej for joining us in this winding chat. Because, it's important. It's important that people are able to be their best selves and contribute in the way that's meaningful. And I know that our workplace is a richer place for the inclusive team that we are.
Thanks.
Sure.
Awesome.
Bye.
Peace.
Thank you.